Hola chamas y chamos, welcome back to Alvaro Dev Labs. Thanks everyone to join. Happy New Year. I'm really excited to start this year with new videos, new content about Nuxt, Vue, 3D and more. So after holiday season, I wanted to start this new year on the channel with a video that it was quick and easy to do. So I spent a lot of time in December working on my portfolio, which is made with Nuxt 3, and I managed to implement a GitHub Action or a CI/CD pipeline that checks my performance using Lighthouse score to tell me if the performance of my page is affected by any new feature that I'm working on. And I've thought about it's a really nice topic to share with you. It's really useful. You can implement it in your projects, in your work, to keep an eye on the performance that we all worry about. For those of you that you already have worked with performance before, you might know what Lighthouse is. But for those of you that doesn't know, it's a tool provided by Google that allows developers to identify quick wins on performance. This tool provides you a report with certain scores depending on the KPIs, which are the web vitals, and some other information about accessibility and best practices. However, it's important to note that you shouldn't rely only in the Lighthouse scores. Most of the companies do this mistake. And if you want to know more about it, there is an awesome article by Philip Rakowski, the CTO of Vue Storefront. It's called, I think, You're Probably Using Lighthouse Score Wrong. So I will leave the link in the description below so you can check it. Moving forward, we are going to analyze one of the Nuxt web pages that we have done in this channel, which is the Sushi Wood website. And we are going to implement with GitHub Actions a pipeline that checks the Lighthouse score every time we push some commits into our repository. So let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by Storyblok. So as I was mentioning in the beginning of the video, we are going to use the Sushi Wood website that we created in the channel for the Storyblok plus Nuxt series. And we are going to add a pipeline with GitHub Actions to check the Lighthouse score. So if you want to do the report manually, you can always go to your developer tools and go to the last tab, which is Lighthouse, and generate a report. You have several categories that you can choose from, and also the device that you want to emulate. I totally recommend you to use an incognito window for this because it's known that extensions and some of the things that you can install in Chrome might affect the result. So be careful to use always incognito. If you click here to generate a report, it's gonna take a time.
3 weeks later.
And then it's gonna prompt you with the scores. Okay, so we have a pretty decent score for this page, which it hasn't been optimized, to be honest. It has a few tweaks in terms of the critical path for CSS, okay? But it's pretty fair. So what we want to do is do exactly the same process, but programmatically in the pipelines. To do that, we are going to need a CLI provided by Google, which is called Lighthouse CI CLI. I know, wordings, but it's like CI because it's used in the continuous integration, as CLI because it's a command line tool. It's different from the main CLI. It's only for these purposes, but we are gonna see how you can install it. Okay, so I just opened the VS Code with the Sushi Wood project, and we are gonna open the terminal because we want to check how the Lighthouse CI works locally. So to install it, we are gonna use npm install add lh for Lighthouse CI /CLI. Super complicated. I'm gonna write it here and you can copy and paste it. We need to add the flag -g to install it globally. Okay, so let's do enter. It's important to notice that you don't need to install it in the repository whatsoever. Okay, so after a few seconds it's already installed. So what we can do is check if it's actually doing something. So let's do lhci auto run. So it's gonna say that there is a directory that is breathable. It's gonna be the .lighthouse CI directory, and that we don't have a configuration, and that's right, because we haven't configured yet to work with our Nuxt application, even though it's gonna try to do something. So let's cancel it for now, okay, and clear the terminal. And next we are gonna configure the Lighthouse CI to work with Nuxt. To configure your Lighthouse core locally, you can create a .lighthouserc.js file in the root of your project, okay? So inside here, we can say module exports, and then inside we can set the configuration. So there is a property called CI, okay? And inside of the CI, we can set several stuff. One of them is going to be the assertions, okay, or the assert. So this one is pretty important because here is where we are going to set all the rules that we want our CI to check. If you remember correctly, here in the Lighthouse core, we have performance KPIs, we have accessibility, best practices, CEOs, and even PWA. So to get started with it, I'm going to use a preset, but I don't recommend you to do it when you're starting because it's really strict. I'm just gonna do it once to show you what's prompt, but then we are gonna create our own assertions with the needs that we have. Okay, so for now, Lighthouse, I think is the one that it says recommended. So let's use this one. Then, collect. Here is where we are gonna say where to collect the data. Since we are using Nuxt and we are creating a static website, we are generating an SSG website. So we're gonna tell it to run the Lighthouse against the static folder. To do that, we can use collect, and then inside of it, there is one property called dist_dir. If you remember correctly, whenever we generate it, it's gonna create an output public, and here is gonna leave our application built, okay? Or generated, like a pre-render or all the different pages with the HTML. So we want to check that. Instead of this, we're gonna use .output, and it's gonna be public. Okay. One thing though, I already built it before this. So if you want to generate it from scratch, you need to do nr. Is the same as npm or pnpm. It depends on your package manager. It's an extension from I think Anfu that it checks your repository, what log do you have, and you use the correct package manager. So I'm gonna use nr, and it's generated thing. So if we run that, it's gonna generate a website. As you see, is the correct directory. So output public. Let me check if we put it correctly. Yep, seems like it. And it's pre-rendering all the different pages. Okay, that's cool. So now let's test it out. Also, just before doing that, actually, you can set like a public storage to upload the reports. The reports are normally an HTML. So by default, you can use temporary public storage, and it's going to upload it for you. So you can have a preview of the report. Okay, I just realized there is a typo here, so it's not gonna work the preset. So it's Lighthouse recommended. And also, just to be sure, okay, let's serve the static site that we generated. To do that, you can use npx serve, and we are going to serve output public to see if it's correctly generated. Okay, so we're gonna go to localhost. Let me open it actually right below here so you can see it. Where is it? Okay, it's here, full size. Okay, here you have the generated HTML, like a static website, okay? So it is working. Now, there is something we need to change in the configuration just before I start. And the reason is that Nuxt, whenever you generate the SSE, is going to contain several HTML files because they have the fallback for SVA. So you have the 200.html and 400.html. This CI tool is going to check all the HTML. So we need to tell it which one we are interested into, which is the index HTML. So here we can use a property called URL and localhost. We don't need to define the port, okay? It's gonna be automatic. And then index HTML, okay? Or I don't know if you can even use this like this. Don't define the index HTML, okay? So let's see here in the terminal and let's run again lhci outrun. Now it's gonna say that it found a configuration file, okay? And it's gonna check some other stuff, like if you have the GitHub token, which is not necessary here, it's gonna be for a further step. So health check pass. Now it's gonna start creating web servers on this port. If you click on it, you're gonna be redirected to Chrome, okay? And you're gonna see your SSG application or website already there, okay? The reason it's doing it several times is because it's doing a media of all the scores to give you a better result. So run 1, run 2, and run 3, it takes some time. Also consider that we are only checking the first page, the home page, okay? So this is, okay, perfect. We have a prompt and this is exactly what I wanted to show you. So here is going to show you different things that fail, for example, okay? It has 3 levels. It has error, it has warning, and it has like success. So in this case, the preset that we have, the Lighthouse recommended, it says that the mean score for this assertion, the minimal score for Apple Touch icon, is 0.9, and it found 0 because we haven't defined an Apple Touch icon. This is for the PWA, I think. Let's see if we can find anything related to, yeah, it's everything related to PWA. This one as well, splash screen. Okay, this is about performance on best practices like unsized images. We are not explicitly defining the width and the height, for example. We have cumulate layout shift, so we have a little bit of layout shift. Okay, interesting. This is one of the web vitals. Okay, first minimum pain, pretty good, almost the 0.9, so it's only giving you a warning. Okay, as you can see, it's pretty strict. So let's actually, and something that I always recommend to teams that are working on performance is that to define the budget or like what makes sense for them. Not all the pages need to be 100% score, okay? But they need to be performant for your use case, for your users. So it's up to your team to define which scores are okay for your application or for your product. In this case, for example, 85 or 89 is pretty decent, to be honest. How we can customize the assertions then? Oh, just quick before we go to it. Also, it's gonna tell you that it upload the report into a Google API storage. So if we click here and we say yes, open please, and we move to here, let me see what page is open. Maybe it's this one. So we have a score of 60. Okay, that's pretty bad. And the cumulative shift here looks different. So this is one of the reports that was shared. And it says, okay, serve images in new next-gen formats. This is the complete report that you can even download and work on it. So now that I showed you how you can see the reports, I can show you how to customize your assertion and get rid of this recommended preset that is really strict. So to do that, you can use this. So there is an object inside of assert which is called assertion. And inside of it, you can set different keys, which are, for example, the categories performance to say that give me a warning whenever my performance is going under this score. And if you see in the report, it's always like 90, 84, or something like that. Here you need to define it as a value below 1. So in this case, it's going to be 0.9, for example. In categories, we have accessibility, and we want it to be 100% accessible. So we are gonna prompt an error whenever the score is lower than that. Okay, so let's run it again and see what we have.
Several days later.
Okay, so we have some results here. And as expected, we are failing on accessibility because we have 0.93. Let's see what's that. And for the categories performance, we have a warning because our performance is 0.60, which is kind of bad. Okay, it's different from the one that we did in the Chrome browser, which is really interesting. Let's open the report. So it's this one, and we have a cumulative layout shift that is pretty big, and largest contentful paint is really bad. So it says like serve images in next gen formats. What could happen is that I actually show you the page on Netlify, and then when it's hosted in Netlify, it optimizes a lot of stuff. And here is creating a web server directly, so that's why here is worse than the other one we saw before. More interesting about the accessibility, so it says that background and foreground colors don't have enough sufficient contrast. Okay, so it's saying that for some people it might be difficult to distinguish between this orange, which is kind of impressive because it's pretty, it gives a lot of contrast though. Like if I check here, let's see. Okay, well it has a, okay, yeah, could be. It has the almost 3 on contrast, so it's fair. Okay, maybe we should fix that, or okay, don't do this in real life. Okay, so we want a warning whenever our performance is lower than 0.7. Okay, and for this, let's say 0.93. Okay, just to pass it. But you should probably fix it. Okay, it depends on your accessibility requirements, to be honest. Okay, so let's leave it like that, and now let's show how to create a GitHub action. But first, some words from our sponsors. Looking for a CMS solution that is great both for marketing teams and developers? Look no further. Storyblok is the headless CMS solutions that you always wanted to have. See how easy it is to change content for your website with a real-time visual editor, creating a delightful customer experience for your teams. Go from a content update to production in no time. Storyblok is easily integrable with multiple tech stacks, making your dev team's life easier. Go and try it for free at storyblok.com. Okay, so welcome back. I had to do this the day after because my neighbors were destroying their whole apartment, apparently, so the noise kept me from continuing the video yesterday. Let's jump into it right away. Here I have in GitHub, this is the repository for my portfolio, and I wanted to show you what GitHub Actions are. Here I have some CI/CD pipelines defined, and one of them is the CI here, which is my Lighthouse action that I'm gonna show you how to create it for your repository. So if I click inside of it, You can see the visual feedback if it was successful or not, and this one is particularly the one for checking the performance. So we are going to define a script that is going to set up the caching, set up the PNPM because we're using that package manager and so on. It's going to install the CLI here. Important, it needs to build because in the pipeline you need to build the application of the website because it's not going to take it from your repo. You are not pushing or committing any of these folders, so it needs to build it again. But yeah, it's similar as you saw it locally, okay? And for my portfolio, for example, I'm having a performance of 81, and I have some issues, for example, in terms. Something that I didn't mention, you can also define in the configuration several URLs. So I'm not only checking the home, I'm checking also the page for blog, and we can do that even in Storybook, okay? So to set up that, we need to create something in the repository, a GitHub folder. If you know already how to define workflows with GitHub Actions, you can skip this part. If not, stay with me, okay? So you need to create a folder inside of the repository, which is .github, and inside of it, workflows. And here you can create the YAML files for your pipelines, okay? So if I enter here, this is an example of one. So basically I'm gonna copy the one that I have here, okay? And then explain you a little bit how it works. So let's do that, and let's go to here, to our repository. Let's open the sidebar, and we don't have the GitHub config file yet, so GitHub, and then was workflows, and let's say Lighthouse CI YAML. Okay, inside of let's paste this. I'm gonna show you this afterwards. Is where we are setting on environment variables, okay? But well, let's keep it there because since we are using Storyblok API, we will need the secret to render it, okay? But let's keep it there, and probably I need to add the secret that I have locally into the GitHub Actions. I'm gonna show you in a moment. Let's focus on this one. So in this part here, we are gonna tell it please run the build. In our case, it's not pnpm run build. It's gonna be pnpm run generate. And then we are gonna run the Lighthouse CI. Okay, next thing will be to install the GitHub app. So if you go to this URL that I will put in the description below, it will jump you to the GitHub app for the Lighthouse CI. And if you click install, it will tell you where do you want to install it. I'm gonna choose two of my repositories. Okay, so I have my portfolio. No, this one is not my repository. Portfolio. This one. And let's choose Sushi Wood. Okay, so install and authorize, and then it's gonna redirect me, and it's gonna give me a token. So you have to add this token into your repositories that you want this application to run in. So to do that, you can go to your repository here, and if you go to settings, you will have in the part of security something called secrets. And if you click in actions, you're gonna have all the environment and repository secrets. So if you click here in new repository and you go here and copy and paste your secret, okay? So I'm going to just, Okay, I think we're good for the last part of the tutorial where we are gonna push our code and see the action and see the pipeline in action. So here we are gonna add all the changes that we did. So git add dot and git commit. Let's call it feature at Lighthouse CI pipe. Okay, so git push. Cool, and if we go to our repository here, cool, and if we go to our repository here and go to actions, there should be already one here, which is the CI, and you can see it running. So this is the feature we just pushed, and if we go inside, it's running the Lighthouse CI action. So if we go inside, we can see live how it's trying to set up everything. So it's installing pnpm right now. Let's wait a couple of minutes.
One eternity later.
Okay, seems like now everything works. It's building the Nuxt website correctly, pre-rendering all the routes. And now it's running the Lighthouse CI.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
Okay, so seems like we passed. Let's see the run Lighthouse CI. So it is giving us a warning about the performance because we are achieving 0.62 and we wanted more than 70, but the accessibility that we tweak is working. So if we want to see the report, and we go here, and wow. This is the point that I don't know if it's better to point to a staging. So imagine that you have your website, and instead of doing this local host, I think it will be better if you launch it against the environment that is going to be served, like in Netlify, for example. So you manage to set the staging URL and you add it to the configuration. I think it's going to be better. Because here is always going to have less performance than the production side. Okay? And that, chamos y chamas, is everything for today's video. So I hope you enjoy and you learned something new with me. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions, any problems with your GitHub Actions and the setup of the Lighthouse CI, CLI. Oh, I say it correctly. Don't forget to subscribe, drop a like. As always, you can find all the links in the description below. I'm gonna also add a boilerplate with a plain Nuxt application with the GitHub action, so you can copy and paste directly in your project and debug if any issues. See you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.